So when we talk about sewing, there's specialty sewing. We've been doing a lot of that. But there's general sewing too. And you want to make sure that when you're sewing, you're having a good time. And the machine and you, well, you're a team and you're cooperating. I'm going to talk a lot today about the basic sewing feet. We're going to be sewing on the Baby Lock Altair. And I'm also going to be talking about some basic feet that are kind of special, but they're still the basic utility feet. I'm Cathy, this is Sewing Tech Talk, and let's get down to some basics. So on the Baby Lock Altair, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about some just basic straight utility sewing and some precision sewing. And I am going to be talking about these aren't Baby Lock, they're aftermarket feet. They're the SewFine Ultra T feet. And these are a very special foot. They replace 3 of the most basic feet that come with your Baby Lock or Brother machine. Now, unfortunately, these are currently only available that I know of for Baby Lock or Brother. Will they be available for other machines? That I do not know. But these are pretty awesome, and I want to show you how they relate to the machine when we're doing some basic stitching and some a little bit fancier stitching. So let's go to the let's go to the feet. So I'm going to go to the feet of them, and I laid them out right here to show you the difference. What we're going to be talking about today. So I did a little experiment. So I took this piece of fabric and I just sewed a basic straight stitch, and I did the same speed, same stitch, same fabric, and I used the standard foot that came with the machine, and I used this foot, which is the Ultra T standard. It's the same as the J foot, but it has an R on it. I don't know why, that's just what it is, but it is the same foot. And I want you to notice the difference. Why does this happen? Well, what happens is when you're sewing, friction builds up underneath the foot. And with this type of special material, it's a special high composite resin, friction does not build up under the foot. So as the feed dogs are pulling the fabric through, the top is able to feed through smoothly with the super smooth coating, and because of the fabric, because of the material type it doesn't build up friction. I think you can clearly see the difference. And this fabric is just your standard regular fabric. This is a polyester, and you might be sewing it for a garment or whatever. And it works the same when you're talking about sewing a regular quarter-inch seam as well. Now, the feet also come with an in foot, and an in foot is the foot you're going to use on the machine for decorative stitching. Here's the one that comes with the machine, the metal one, and here is that high performance foot. Now, let me show you the difference basically between a J foot and an in foot. Now, the machine's going to tell you when it wants that foot on there, and many people think they're interchangeable, but they're really not. So here's the 2 feet side by side. This one, you'll notice, has this little black leveling knob on the side. When you engage that, the foot stays flat. And you're going to use that when you're sewing like a jeans hem with this very, very thick material. When we get to the screen of the machine, I'm going to show you how you can have the machine automatically adjust for that as well. So they're different in a couple ways. The first way is on the bottom of the foot. Let me turn both of them over. The J foot is flat, and the in foot has this kind of tunnel that the stitches can flow under. So when you're sewing a decorative stitch, what happens is that the stitches on the top can kind of build up just a little bit. And you don't want them to catch on that back of the foot. So you want to have that tunnel there so that the stitches can flow underneath. Now, it's going to be subtle to see on the video, so I encourage you, if you have your own in and J foot at home, to look at them side by side, because the in foot is a little bit thicker than the J foot. Why is that? Well, this machine, the Baby Lock Altair, and many of the machines in the Baby Lock lineup have automatic tension. And the tension is adjusted depending on the thickness of the fabric. Because the in foot is a little bit thicker, it kind of fools the machine into thinking that you have a little bit thicker something on there. And it adjusts the automatic tension, and you don't even know that it does. So if you select a stitch and your machine suggests that in foot, put on the end foot. It just takes a couple seconds and you're going to get a little bit better results. And now I want to show you a little bit also how to adjust if you have a decorative stitch and you're using kind of an unusual material, how you can adjust that and get a perfect stitch. But I want to show you one more foot before I do that. Let's go back and look at the feet. So the other foot that comes with the machine, with the set, the other foot that comes with the machine actually is this straight stitch foot. And it has this small opening for the needle to come on through. And you notice you couldn't do a zigzag stitch with that. Now this set of feet comes with a 1/4 inch foot and it has a very similar opening. Why is this kind of important? Well, if you're stitching on a fine fabric, there's a fine fabric, or if you're doing some 1/4 inch piecing, what can happen, and I don't know if it's ever happened to you, is the fabric can get pulled down into this large area here that accommodates the swing of the needle when you're doing a zigzag. Have you ever sewed a triangle when you're piecing and it gets pulled down in there? Or have you ever sewn a very thin fabric and it gets pulled down? Well, that's because there's so much space there, it just wants to go down into the nether regions of the machine. So the Altair does come with a single needle hole plate. And here's the magic of this needle plate is the fabric is supported all the way around. So if you're using this foot or this foot, literally, let me see if I can adjust it so that you can see, the fabric is completely supported and it's not going to be pulled down into the bottom of the machine. That's pretty cool. But remember, this machine has a lot of automatic features. And the one automatic feature that I really like with this is there's this magic switch on the bottom. And when you put this needle plate on your machine, it knows you can't adjust your needle back and forth. So it's smart enough to say, you know, we can only start in that center needle position and we can't do a zigzag and we can't do a decorative stitch. So isn't it nice to have a machine that remembers, even if you don't? So one other thing before we come into the land of decorative stitches, which is where we're headed, is this is a Teflon foot. And a Teflon foot is very similar to the end foot in looks, but it is different. It is flat completely on the bottom. This one has that channel. The other thing is, this is a Teflon foot, but this coating on the bottom, this coating is just a coating that's laying on the top of there, and it can be scarred or abraded. The feed dogs on the machine are diamond cut feed dogs, and you're actually not recommended to sew off of the fabric where the feed dogs are in direct contact with either this foot or even this foot. It can scar your foot. To be honest, these don't scar. You can sew off the fabric if you want to, and this high performance material, it's not going to get scarred. So this is what you would use for maybe a vinyl, but and you have limited, because how can you do a decorative stitch? You don't have that tunnel in the back, but you have a foot that'll work on vinyl. It's super slick, and with a regular utility stitch as well, even if you're going to do some 1/4 inch piecing with some vinyl. So I hope you can see that these set of 3 feet, they can do a whole lot. Now I do want to talk about doing a decorative stitch and making sure that it's going to work precisely for your fabric, because we have feet that are going to reduce the friction, so it's going to allow the machine to sew side to side and get us those big decorative stitches. But sometimes we may need to adjust the machine for our particular fabric. This Altair that I'm working with is a brand new Altair, fresh out of the box. So let's sew on some fabric and see if we do have to make some adjustments when we're sewing on just a regular piece of fabric. So let me show you that special stitch that comes on the machine. So we're going to head over to the screen now, and let me show you that. Let me get some of this out of the way. At the screen of the machine, this is our utility stitch. While we're here, just to show you that I can select any stitch just by touching it, and it's going to show me that different stitch right here on the screen, and it's going to show me the actual size of the stitch. Notice when I pick any stitch, it's going to show me the foot that's recommended for that. These stitches, I'll recommend that J foot, and if you're using these high performance feet, it does have an R there, but it's the identical foot. Now, let's go to the land of decorative stitches, where all the fun is. There's different categories. I'm going to touch this one to find the stitch that I really want. So I'm going to come down here. So many stitches, so little time. Now these stitches, they're kind of fun. We're going to come back to these in just a second. But I wanted to show you this stitch for sure. This stitch looks just like a little balloon, doesn't it? Well, I have some controls. I can say, no, I just want one of them. And remember I said how it shows you the stitch in the actual size? Well, it can't because this stitch is so big. This stitch is 50% visuals right here. Let's see the full size. When we touch up here, that's the actual full size of that stitch. And I want you to notice what really happens is, do you see how this stitch can come and it wants to come right to that exact same spot? We're going to use this stitch to adjust the machine to make sure that it's sewing absolutely precisely for any kind of fabric that we choose. What we need to do is we need to do a practice test. Choose this stitch and stitch it, and then we're going to adjust the machine depending on what we see from this stitch. So let's get to sewing. So what we're going to do is look at the screen and it suggests the in foot. So we're going to go with our in foot in our high performance feet. We're going to snap it on the machine. And I'm going to pick a piece of fabric and let's just stitch that little balloon to see what it looks like. Now the machine is going to stitch, and I'm just starting from this line here just to give me a reference point, and let's see what we got going on. Oops, I'm sorry, I'm stitching in white fabric, but white thread on white fabric. Maybe you can see it when we get there. Okay, let's use our scissors and see what the heck we got. Okay, so I hope you can see what I really wanted. Let me get it in the light. What I really wanted is this needle penetration right here to hit this exact hole. Can you see how this line is coming forward? And it's not side to side, it's not absolutely precise into that hole. The other thing is, it's a little bit forward as well. So we need to adjust both of those things. So fortunately, we can. The machine lets us adjust that stitch. So if we go back to the settings pages, on the settings pages we have fine controls. And when we change something on our settings pages, it stays there till we change it back. So we do have to remember, if we're going to a different type of fabric, we can do this test, switch it for that, but we have to remember to switch it back when we're going back to a different fabric or a different project. So let's go to those settings pages and see where this adjustment is. So when I go to the settings, on the very first page, I have the fine adjustment vertically and fine adjustment horizontally. So I know I need to adjust it side to side because I can see that's a little off. Let's just try a little bit one. And I know I need to adjust it a little bit this way. I think it needs to come down just a little bit, and if I choose the wrong number, I can just do another test. I think I'm going to go +1 there too. And when I say OK, the machine is automatically going to adjust that, and it's going to keep those settings adjustments so that when I do my project, it stays there. Remember, I would go back and switch it back if I'm doing a different project. Now let's stitch this little balloon again and see if everything is coming out good. Oops, I pulled my thread out. Well, fortunately, I have needle threading on demand. Ta-da! All right, let's stitch our balloon again. We'll stitch it behind here so that you can see it. Okay, here we go. Oh my goodness! Okay, I hope you can see it. It literally hit the same identical hole. So I'm going to leave these adjustments if I'm doing any kind of stitching here, but I know when I'm doing any kind of a decorative stitch, I have less friction and it's literally going to hit the same hole. So a machine that's going to respond to you when you're doing any kind of a decorative stitch that you can custom adjust for precision, well, that's priceless. Now I'm going to talk to you about some instances where this set of feet isn't exactly the foot that you're going to want to use, because there's some times when you're going to be using multiple layers. And the Baby Lock Altair does come with a specialty foot. Well, it's kind of a specialty attachment, and it's called the digital dual feed. When I attach this accessory that comes with the machine, there's different soles that attach on the bottom. I'm going to be using this when I do multiple layers. What kind of fabrics would I use? Well, if I'm sewing on a quilt, for example, that's a very common one. If I'm sewing a velvet, if I'm sewing that minky or cuddle fabric, or if I'm sewing on any kind of fabric, fur, if I sew on any fabric that's going to want to scoot, this is the foot that I'm going to want to use. When I attach it to the machine, it knows that I have the digital dual feed on because you plug it into the back, and it's going to control those layers. There's one thing I want to show you, and then I'm going to set you free, because this foot, remember how we could control and set up that one foot we just did the decorative stitch? Well, I can do that with this foot as well. So let's see what that looks like. Let's attach this foot, and then we'll go to the settings and I'll show you the special way that you can have your quilts come out perfect. So let's go on back. Now what happens is, this is not a walking foot. It has a band on the bottom, and what the band on the bottom does, it stays in constant contact with that fabric. So what we're going to do is we're going to attach it. It simply replaces the ankle of the machine. And like I said, you do plug in that tail of the foot in the back, so it knows it has that foot on there. Now I'm going to bring up a special situation to give you a visual. Now, here's my little quilt that I mocked up, and I hope you can see that if I'm stitching on this quilt and I come up, what's going to happen is I'm going to get the dreaded tuck, and I really don't want that. Well, like I said, this foot has a band that stays in constant contact with the fabric, and it flows at the same speed that those feed dogs are, unless I don't want it to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell this foot, this band, to pull more fabric on the top than it is on the bottom, and hopefully it'll ease that fabric in. So what we need to do is we're going to go back to the settings pages and make another adjustment on this in the settings of the machine. Remember, the settings pages are going to keep that adjustment until you switch them out. And I'm doing my quilt. This is going to be kind of a special situation when I have that tuck, because it happens to me, but it probably doesn't happen to you. So let's switch that and tell it to pull more fabric on the top. So we don't need this. Obviously, we're going to go back to our utility stitches and just do our regular straight stitch. Notice the machine now knows I have that digital dual feed on. When I come up to my settings pages, right here on that same first page, I have the dual feed adjustment. And I'm going to say, you know what? That looks like a pretty big tuck. Let's do a lot of extra pulling in the front. Okay. So now it should pull more fabric on the top than it does on the bottom, because I didn't layer my quilt very well, did I? And I don't want that tuck, because that would make me very unhappy. So let's see if it pulls it in. Let's see if I guessed right. So here's my digital dual feed. I'm coming up and I'm going to get a tuck. Let's hope I don't. Oh my goodness, it tried, but I didn't get a tuck, and it evenly fed that fabric all the way through here. I don't know if you can see that. And I didn't get a tuck there like I surely would have with any other regular foot. So that's pretty cool, right? So there's all kinds of adjustments you can make to your machine. And I do like these new Ultra T foot because they reduce friction. And friction, well, it kind of makes sewing a little bit more friction-y. I don't know, because I want my sewing to be fun and I want things to just flow smoothly. I don't know about you. So the Baby Lock Altair has a lot of different controls for doing all kinds of basic sewing, and it does a bunch of other fun stuff too. It's a rocket embroidery machine. I'm going to ask George to tell you a lot more about the Altair. Thanks for watching me today, and let's take the friction out of our life. What do you say?
Thanks, Cathy. As usual, that was an incredible presentation. The Baby Lock Altair is dollar for dollar the most advanced machine in the industry. It has a large 9.5 by 14-inch embroidery area, plus 494 built-in beautiful designs, 30 of the most amazing fonts that you can arc and ray and edit, plus many large, beautiful monograms. You have the ability to create a design without a computer. With the IQ Designer, you can take an image from a phone, send it to a machine, and it turns into beautiful embroidery instantly. You also have an automatic applique creator to create great borders around names and other embroidery designs. Plus, of course, we love our never miss needle threader, and it also cuts all the jump stitches that you want. Now, it's not just for embroidery. This is an incredible machine with 11.25-inch opening. It also has a automatic fabric sensor. This fabric sensor senses heavy fabric like denim and sews automatically from there. It will also sew on lighter fabric like tricot. It will sew elastic. It's incredible. Now, for the real difficult fabric and for quilting, it has a digital dual feed with a belt system that controls all fabrics perfectly. It also has a laser guide, so you can guide for that perfect seam allowance. It's incredible. As I mentioned, this is dollar for dollar the most advanced machine in the industry. We have a special package right now. The total package value is $14,999, but we have it on sale for $8,999. We're offering free shipping across the country, as well as we have interest-free payments of under $188 a month. But that's not all. We have a special bonus for a limited time, and while supplies last, we're including 63 spools of beautiful embroidery thread, 2 separate design collections by Anita Good Design, which has over 600 design files in all different styles. We're including stabilizer, all kinds of needles, bobbins, and a membership to Love of Knowledge. We're here, you're going to see all kinds of demonstrations and techniques on the Baby Lock Altair and other sewing techniques. This is for a limited time, but I also mentioned we have interest-free payments. Now, for those who don't want to finance, we have even a better bonus. So give us a call at 1-800-865-9664 or click on the link to order today. Bye for now.